Good morning, everyone. This is a tough morning segment, 3/4 of the way through ad week. I was just mentioning they should have had like hangover packs and maybe sponsorship by Pedialyte for all of you who were out a little bit too late. So I'm going to try to get the morning going with a little bit of interactivity. I don't think we're on our first slide, so maybe you guys can bring it back to the beginning of the presentation. That would be awesome. Just going to wait a second because I'm going to have a little quiz for you guys. All right, we have the technology. So I'm going to show you an object in just a second. And I want you to pair up. If you're spread out, that's going to be a little difficult. I want you to try to guess what this object is and what it's used for. I'm just going to give you a few minutes. So just amongst yourselves, if you have nobody sitting next to you, you have to talk to yourself, which is going to make you look crazy, but it's New York, so nobody's going to think twice. Just take a couple seconds, get some conversations going. What do you think this thing is for? It's actually a functional object. All right, now, rein it back in now that you're all awake. And don't shout it out. Does anybody actually know what this is because they've seen it before or are familiar? Somebody? Okay, let's not spoil it. Any guesses as to what it is? Yeah. I'm sorry? Oh, a compass? Okay, that's a good guess. Yeah? It is a fishing hook, okay? So what's really amazing about this fishing hook, this was designed by the indigenous people of Alaska, late 1800s, but it's a pretty traditional design. It's been around a long time. And this is a pretty extraordinary artifact because this is designed to catch one of their main food sources, which is the Pacific halibut. And it's in the collection of the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History in DC. And I saw it in this exhibit at the Cooper Hewitt Museum, which you've never been to. You should absolutely go. It's an amazing collection of design artifacts. It was in a show called Tools Extending Our Reach about how, the tools that humans have designed throughout human history. And when I saw this, I was really blown away because the design of this thing is incredible for a couple of reasons. One is that it may look primitive, but it's actually much more sophisticated than most modern fishing hooks because it only catches fish of a certain size. The way that it's designed, if the fish are too small, it's going to slip through the hook, right? And more importantly, I don't know if you know how big Pacific halibut are. They grow to over 8 feet long and sometimes 500 pounds. These people were in canoes, so they also didn't want to catch fish that were too big because they could not physically pull it into the canoe. And this hook actually was designed to only capture the fish that were big enough or the right size to pull in and not small because they wanted to preserve those for future seasons. So it's actually this hook that was practicing sustainable fishing way before it was a fad. And that alone is super inspiring, but there's an additional element that's kind of more of the spiritual context, which, it's early in the morning, and I know it's a loaded term, but stay with me. If you look more closely at the carving, this represents a spirit exchange between the land animal and the sea animal. Because what this community believed is if they showed respect towards the fish, that more would come back the next season. This was a part of their belief of how they were going to kind of build a sustainable practice and feed their families for many generations. This was really a guiding principle in the way that they worked. And, it's in stark contrast to some of the modern day fishing practices that we see. And in fact, we can learn a lot from these ancestors because today there's many communities and people around the world who practice something called blast fishing. I don't know if you know what blast fishing is, but this is a very efficient way to bring fish to the surface of the water. Basically, you detonate a bomb in the water. And this is actually what it looks like. And as I said, very effective way to bring fish very quickly to the top. Unfortunately, it also destroys the ecosystem of everything around it, and there's no fish the next year. So you're now asking yourself, Why the hell is she talking about antique fishing hooks? What does this have to do with advertising and Ad Week? Is she at the wrong convention? Did she take too much cold medicine? Who knows what's going on? Well, as a designer, I'm very interested in history because I think in technology, sometimes we convince ourselves that the challenges that we're facing are all new. This is the first time that we've dealt with any of these issues, and often it's not. It's just a different version of something that humans have faced many times before. And I think we can believe a lot and help navigate the future by studying the past. Now, this Alaskan community that designed and employed this hook understood how to balance short and long-term needs and to prosper in a really sustainable way. And this hook got me thinking in the middle of that gallery at the Cooper Hewitt Museum. What if we approached our work in advertising through a lens of sustainability? What would sustainable advertising look like? What if we treated people's attention and their trust as a non-renewable resource to create a mutually beneficial value exchange, that spirit exchange, and showing respect to the people that we're marketing to, all the people of the world? And I started to think about how we could be more like the designers of that hook, full of respect for who we're designing for, the people we're trying to reach with all these messages. And conversely, what are we doing today that is the modern day advertising equivalent of blast fishing, detonating a bomb in the water? Now, I work on the business side of Facebook, and I'm looking to help build a very prosperous, sustainable business. And I like it when we do well as a business. I'm proud of the work that our team does. And I also believe that we have to have very strong principles attached to our work, help us make the right decisions, and not just figure out what we can do, but help us navigate towards what we should do. Now, we all want to be prosperous and to have that prosperity be sustainable. And I know we all want to do good in the world. These two goals are not mutually exclusive, but there is that tension between short and long-term rewards and managing that value exchange with customers. It's been true throughout human history, and we can see that in this halibut hook. But the way that connections are made between businesses and people is rapidly changing. We all know this. That's why we're here this week and talking about it. Now at Facebook, as I said, I work on the ads team, and this is our mission, to make meaningful connections between people and businesses. Now, some people think that we make these products for just the sake of making money, and again, the sustainable business is hugely important. I mean, it is, after all, Ad Week. But we see the revenue as a tool to fulfill our mission to make the world more open and connected. And it's not just about funding that mission, it's an intrinsic part of the mission, because when we create economic prosperity and jobs, we actually help make the world more open and connected in a different way. And, in fact, this was something that we partnered with Deloitte to explore and to really try to understand in detail what this meant. And what we found was that in 2015, when we partnered with them, they estimated that the connective power of Facebook and its marketing and developing platforms was responsible for $227 billion of economic impact worldwide and helped create 4.5 million jobs. This is a really important part of the mission of what we're trying to do, is not just bring people online, but make sure that they're coming online into a rich marketplace of businesses that they can connect with and get value from. So we want to support these new industries, and because each business has the opportunity to make new connections that are meaningful for people. But I want to show you something to really visualize what this means. This is a video that shows all of the people coming online since 1992 to the present day. Every single one of those yellow dots is a mobile phone coming online. And what's really beautiful about this, when you think about it, each human connecting with the rest of the world for the first time often. And the blue dots are all the businesses coming online. 60 million businesses currently that have a presence on Facebook. It's an incredible opportunity for us to connect those yellow and blue dots in meaningful ways. Now this week we had a pretty big announcement, which is that out of those 60 million businesses that are present on the platform, we have 4 million active advertisers that are actually using those systems to connect with people all around the world. That's exciting, but it's also a huge responsibility. And it gets me back to that hook. What's going to be the halibut hook that allows us to create that value exchange between people and businesses? That elegant solution that's going to establish the balance between short and long term. This is the heart of the value exchange. It's what I want to talk to you about today. Now, in August of this year, we hit a pretty exciting milestone as well. For the first time ever, 1 billion people used Facebook in a single day. And every single one of those people provides us with incredible value, with the information that they give us. And because we learn so much from them and how they're bringing mobility into their lives, we have to give them an enormous amount of value back in return. And that's how we feed that relationship, to continually feed that value exchange. And it's true with many people that we partner with, our partners, trying to provide value to our business partners so that they come back each year, season after season, to tap into that value. So, to that end, what I want to do, in the interest of the value exchange between me and you as the audience, is to share some of the lessons that we've learned over, years of interesting experiments, trial and failure, of how to design for a mobile global community. What are the things that are changing about the way that product design works, shifting from a desktop world to a mobile world, from a US-centric position to a truly global perspective. There's 3 main lessons that I want to cover. One is, are we designing for people where they are? Are we designing not just for people, but with people? And are we designing with respect for everyone that we're connecting with? And I'm going to dig into each of these and give you some examples of things that we've learned in the process. So the first critical lesson is we have to design for people where they are. Now, the US is only 3% of the world population, but man, we dominate the tech and design conversations and standards. We're a very egocentric culture. And yet, most of the people that we're designing for in a global company like Facebook, and I'm sure many of the companies that you work with and for, we're trying to reach people all over the world. And there's a real danger in projecting our own experience and the way that we live and work on the rest of the world in ways that may not be relevant to them. There's this real opportunity to break into new markets and connect with new communities, and it's exciting for marketers to reach people in new ways. But we're only going to succeed if we take into account the kinds of devices and connections and contexts in which people are working and living. Now, this is what Google and Facebook and YouTube look like to most people around the world. 58% of the world use basic feature phones like these, not the latest iPhone 6, with all the beautiful features and camera and capabilities. These are very basic phones. They're lifelines for people, but they do not have the kinds of capabilities that most of us have day to day. And understanding how to design for these devices is critical if you're going to design for where people are. Now, it also means that they're hyper aware of data usage because, these phones don't hold a lot of information and it's hard to download a lot of things. That gets me to the next thing, which is even though you see the news and it's exciting that smartphone penetration is improving dramatically, connection speeds are not. So basically what you have is a whole bunch of people with phones that they can't fully utilize because of the connection speeds that they have access to. So I want to show you a couple of pretty interesting visualizations. There's not actually a single map of network connectivity, but Facebook is so pervasive that it's actually a pretty good proxy for the connection speeds that we see people connecting to our product. This is a map of the most dominant connections in any one particular area. So in yellow, you see 4G connections to Facebook. In yellow, it's mostly the US, Northern Europe, Japan, South Korea. 3G is in blue, so still pretty pervasive. But look what happens when you get into certain areas. In red, that's 2G. That's the norm. It is extraordinarily slow. 2 minutes to download a single web page. It will take years to meaningfully shift this map. And pink, by the way, completely unconnected. Now, to really put this, to bring this point home, I want to show you what it looks like to load Facebook from a cold start on a 2G network in a place like India. And this is a real capture. Waiting. Waiting. honestly. Right? The amazing thing is people are so interested in accessing these experiences, they deal with this every day. We are so spoiled and clueless about how hard it is to access information from most of the world. And so these are the kinds of empathy experiences that you should force yourself to have. At Facebook, we have 2G Tuesdays where employees can opt into forcing their phones into 2G connections all day. So you can just remind yourself, the connection I have is not the connection the rest of the world has. It's very easy to forget that. So as we're building our tools, we have to really be clued into the local realities and not the way we live. So in response to that, we build things like a stripped down version of Facebook called Facebook Lite. It's for Android. Uses tons less data, loads way more quickly. The app is less than a megabyte, so you can actually fit on this phone and you can download it even at slower speeds. It is most popular in places where it's most needed: Brazil, India, Indonesia, Mexico, Philippines. It's available in 56 languages. And it's used by over 100 million users globally, which is pretty interesting when you consider the fact that the telephone took 75 years to reach 100 million people. We're also developing products that bring things like video to geographies that cannot access video. This is a product called Slideshow, where businesses can take an existing video or static assets, photos, and stitch them into a slideshow that brings motion to phones that don't usually see it. Now, this looks pretty rudimentary to us, but it's really exciting for a phone that, doesn't have access to video. And for marketers, a really exciting opportunity to create the start of sight, sound, and motion for phones that, we can't actually distribute video to. And obviously this is super exciting for all kinds of marketers. It's also exciting for kind of social efforts. So for instance, in South Africa, the IEC, the Electoral Commission of South Africa, wanted to encourage 1 million new voter registrations, mostly young people, 18 to 30, so these folks are on their phones all the time. And we worked with them, and I'm sorry, that kind of played, okay, great, it's gonna loop. We worked with them to take their TV ad and to create a video for smartphone users. And so if they had good connection speeds, we could get them the video, but also an accompanying slideshow for 2G users and people on older devices. And 10 million people saw the ad at a frequency of almost 10 times. And the result was 1.6 million new voter registrations, 80% of which were between the ages of 18 and 30. This is about designing for people where they are. Next, I want to talk about the second principle, which is not to just design for people, but also design with people. Now, I want to start with a story. You guys see what she's playing with? Play-Doh? Does anybody know what Play-Doh was originally created to do? Any guesses? Yeah. Close. Adhesive. Window seal, close. It was a wallpaper cleaner. And some enterprising preschool teacher noticed that kid was playing with it, molding it. Somehow this notion spread. All these people starting to use this wallpaper cleaner as a creative toy for children. Now, what did Play-Doh do? Did they get in and stick to their guns and say, no, stop that kid from using my wallpaper cleaner? They were like, holy Moses, we got to pivot. This is amazing. Thankfully, they checked their ego at the door, and they created one of the most iconic brands, and in my mind, just as importantly, one of the most creativity-inspiring materials of all time. If you've ever seen kids play with Play-Doh, it's like an imagination factory. Sometimes innovation is achieved through intentional, preconceived paths, and sometimes the world takes us on a completely different path than we expected. And the question is, will we notice, and will we have the humility to follow? Now, I'm part of the design team at Facebook. I like to think we're a pretty capable, talented team. Certainly, we're very passionate about our work, but it's important that we remember we are not the sole designers of Facebook. You're all designing Facebook too, every day, every time you use it. 1.71 billion people worldwide who use our products, and 4 million businesses who are partnering with us. You can take a lot of credit for what we build and iterate towards because we create software. Software is even more malleable than Play-Doh. When it's done right, it's an organic, living thing. It's constantly iterating, learning, morphing, turning into the next best version of itself. And we help it along. We do a lot of upfront research. We test the hell out of things. And then we watch and we observe how people and businesses use what we put out into the world. And the fact is, most great tech innovations, they did not intentionally set out to solve the problem that they eventually addressed and really had global impact with. YouTube did not set out to reinvent classroom instruction, but then the Khan Academy showed them, wow, there's this amazing application for video that you did not even think about. Twitter did not invent hashtags. That is something that the community created because they wanted to improve discoverability. And Facebook was not invented as a fundraising platform for rare diseases, or the world's largest photo album, or the most powerful happy birthday engine ever created. The people of the world showed us all that stuff. And it's a key way that we discover even bigger opportunities than we might have imagined ourselves. This is even more pronounced in the age of mobile because mobile phones are in such a bigger group and more diverse group of hands of people all around the world. So you think about all the creativity that we're tapping into all around the world, watching people use our products. And the context that they're carrying those products into, way more diverse than obviously where laptops and desktop machines can go. So how do we recognize these opportunities? Well, listen, we see these things in the physical world all the time. Again, we think, oh, this is a new thing. It's not a new thing. There's this thing, I don't know if you've heard of it. They're called desire paths. Has anyone ever heard of a desire path? If you haven't heard of the term, you have definitely seen it because they crop up all the time in public space, right? Desire path is created by foot or bicycle traffic, often alongside a less efficient and desirable planned pathway. This is where the landscape architect is like, why didn't I think of that? It's a good reminder about how much we have to learn from people. I found a whole bunch of these on Reddit. It's super entertaining to see what they're named. This is like, the people have spoken, or the desire is strong in this one, or that's what you think. This push towards efficiency and effectiveness. People know what they want and need, and they're going to design it for themselves if we don't give it to them. Now, today's technology gives us that opportunity and really the responsibility to observe and see the desire paths in our digital products. That's where mining through log data and doing usability testing and really being humble in terms of observing how people are using our products and experiencing the things that we put out into the world to be open to change. And it's true in, obviously, many areas of life, right? Feedback. This is how we get better as people, as designers, as marketers. Did anyone see the film Brickumentary? It was about Lego. Highly recommended. Really fascinating story of an iconic brand. In the 90s, Lego almost went out of business because at the time, they were a very insular culture. They had this unbelievable community of people who were obsessed with Lego. They had conventions and clubs. They were designing these whole worlds, and Lego had nothing to do with it. They said, only Lego can design Lego. And they had this moment where, under extraordinary leadership by their CEO, they realized, there's this great quote in the film. He said, 99% of the genius in the world is outside of our company. What an extraordinary statement. And it's also obviously just true, right? For every company. There's so much intelligence outside of your company. Do you have the humility to tap into it? As a result of this shift of engaging with that community and inviting outside people to design Lego systems and products, it contributed to Lego passing Mattel to become the biggest toy brand in the world. So again, We need to have humility in the design process. It opens us up to new ideas and perspectives, and to be open to the fact that great ideas come from outside. This is part of the reason why APIs and third-party development are so important to companies like Facebook and Google and Twitter. We're not under the delusion that all of the best developers and ideas are inside of our company. Certainly, we're proud of our teams, but we know we have a lot of intelligence to harness outside. And there's a ton of examples of the Facebook community taking our technology in directions that we never would have conceived of. And thankfully, we observed that desire path, and we tried to help that come to fruition. So it's a great example of a product that we launched a while ago called Safety Check. So following the 2011 tsunami in Japan, there were engineers working in Japan, and they saw how people were using Facebook in a pretty unexpected way. They were using it to notify friends and family, just posting on their timeline, I'm safe, I'm okay. This was just something that the community organically figured out because, of course, the telephones weren't working, but if for whatever reason you had a moment of connectivity, where are you going to be able to connect to your family and friends? It's going to be on Facebook. The team figured this out, and they said, how can we make this easier? How can we make this really work for people to help people feel more safe and connected? And so now, if you are in an area of natural disaster or some kind of cataclysmic event, we can trigger Safety Check, which notifies you if you are from that area or if you are traveling in that area. You get a notification that says, let your friends and family know that you're okay. Since then, we've deployed in a bunch of crises following typhoons, cyclones, earthquakes, terrorist attacks. And after one of the devastating earthquakes in Nepal, we had more than 7 million people marked safe. 150 million people received notifications of their friends and family being safe. And in Ecuador, after an earthquake there, over 3 million people marked safe. And now we've actually made it so that communities can enable Safety Check for themselves, because we can't necessarily be in touch with everything that's going on in all the areas that this may be needed. This is a great example of a product that the community came up with, and we kind of helped bring to market, if you will, on their behalf. That's what I mean when I say not just designing for you, but with you. We need to constantly be looking and observing. Now, the last message, the last theme, the last lesson is probably the most important one of all, especially for the purposes of what we're here to talk about today. Designing with respect. Now, you've probably heard of the genre of dystopian fiction. What are some of your favorite dystopian films, novels? There's so many to choose from. Yeah, Hunger Games, I don't know. What's some other ones? What's that? Brave New World. Yeah, Blade Runner. So in so many of them, advertising plays a very disturbing role, right? There's always a scene of dystopian advertising. Minority Report is my favorite. Remember, he's like walking along in the mall and like he can't escape the messages. All of the stores are selling to him, and he like runs out of the mall to escape. It's this horrifying future that film and writers are envisioning for what advertising is going to be as a part of our lives, invading every crevice of our lives and minds. But is this really inevitable? I mean, it's a huge assumption that's being made here. But what if the opposite is true? Instead of unbridled access by businesses, what if technology empowered people to design their own experiences and help them control the experiences that they wanted to have? What would we need to do to be on the winning side of that scenario? Being seen as a partner to the people of the world and empowering them to use technology instead of being enslaved by it. I'm sure we all want to be on the winning side of that equation. Now, as much as we in digital advertising wield a lot of power and influence, consumers are just increasingly empowered as well. They have access to media on demand, they choose what apps to engage with, and they have expectations of their own. They expect value. They expect transparency. They expect control. They deserve it They want it. We all want it. And the best breakthroughs come when we understand people's needs and wants, when we respect and understand their time and attention. So we've been doing a lot of work on this, figuring out how can we best give people that sense of control and transparency. We have a product called Ad Preferences, where say you're looking through your news feed and you can see an ad that doesn't seem relevant to you and you're like, why am I seeing this? You can see the ad targeting topic that caused us to show that to you, or whatever signal was provided that made that ad show up for you in your feed, and you're given the option to remove that, which removes the advertiser's ability, any advertiser's ability to target you for that topic. This is a really powerful kind of ability that we are giving people to say, this is what I want and this is what I don't want. And you can get an overview of all of the topics that are being targeted towards you. If you have not used this, I would highly encourage you to do it. It's extremely interesting to see what Facebook thinks you are interested in. We're getting pretty good at it, but like occasionally there's interesting stuff in there, so it's like an interesting thing to spend 10 or 15 minutes on. And really to hone that sense and to actually provide us, you know what, I'm actually interested in basketball, but you're not targeting me on that. Let's add that there and remove, lacrosse. I'm sure that everyone here has topics that you never want to see an ad for ever again. Any thoughts on stuff that you were like, if I never see an ad for that, it will be too soon? Baby stuff? Oh, dating websites. Agreed. Weight loss is also. We actually don't have advertising for that very reason. There's topics that usually do not play well regardless. For me, ironically, obviously fishing, even with the talk of all the fishing hooks, I don't want to see ads on fishing. There's this very powerful sense of self-determination when you give people these tools and give them a sense of how is this stuff working from behind the scenes, and showing them the respect that they deserve to understand how it works and to give them a sense of control. And it's just a really good exchange of that, example of that value exchange in practice, empowering people to control their experiences. And also, quite frankly, for the businesses of the world, you don't want to waste resources showing impressions to people who are antagonistic towards that topic, right? It's good for everyone when we get a really positive signal on that. Now, millions of people have used this ad preference tool, and they're engaging with it. They're feeling kind of more in control and more respected as a result. But it's not always easy to know what path to take, even with all of these lessons. This is always a practice in humility when you're designing for the global community. These 3 lessons that we have been honing over the years have taught us a lot and continue to teach us a lot. Designing for people where they are, not where we are, but where everyone else is. Designing not just for people, but with people. Are we really tapping into the genius outside of our companies and seeing those desire paths and following them? And are we respecting the people that we are reaching out to, making that the guiding force of our interactions? This is the way we're going to find our halibut hooks for all of our businesses. The thing that's going to make us smarter, have a more sustainable business, have a more sustainable relationship with our clients and our customers. And it's a pact that we have with 1.71 billion people using Facebook and 4 million businesses that want to connect with them. That we're going to use these insights that we have to hopefully create the most revolutionary, the most relevant, the most valuable advertising experiences that people have ever experienced. We haven't fully realized that yet. We're on the path to it. That's our desire path. But we're working hard to get there every day. We're really excited to collaborate with lots of people. This is a team sport that we are engaged in. So I want to thank you for all the value that you're bringing to partnerships, for those of you who are working with Facebook. It's a super exciting time to be in this industry. And we're just really grateful to work alongside you to connect the world in profound ways. So thank you.